Admiral Thek stood confidently on his command bridge, preparing to send the final surrender demand to Earth, when something impossible began to happen. Space itself started to ripple and bend around his fleet like water disturbed by an unseen hand. The Imperial sensors suddenly went wild, detecting massive energy signatures that had not been there seconds before. At first, Thek thought his equipment was malfunctioning. No primitive species could generate energy readings that strong without being detected by the most advanced sensors in the galaxy. But then the ripples in space became visible to the naked eye, and reality itself seemed to twist and fold in ways that defied everything the Empire knew about physics. The first human ship materialized, directly above the Imperial flagship, appearing out of nothing like a metal mountain emerging from invisible fog. It was enormous, bigger than any ship in the Imperial fleet, and covered with weapons that looked nothing like the primitive technology the Empire had been expecting. Captain Bach stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought, watching through her view screen as more and more ships appeared around the trapped Imperial fleet. Her vessel had been hiding in folded space for weeks, waiting for this perfect moment when the enemy would be completely surrounded and helpless. The materialization was perfectly coordinated with precise timing that had been planned for months. Human ships appeared above, below, and on all sides of the Imperial formation, creating a three-dimensional cage of death from which there could be no escape. Advanced stealth technology had kept them invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. Thek's jaw dropped as he watched hundreds of human warships appear around his fleet. Each one was larger and more advanced than anything in the Imperial Navy, and they were all pointed directly at his ships. Their weapons were already charged and ready to fire, while his own forces were still trying to understand what was happening. "This is impossible," he whispered to his bridge crew. "How did they build so many ships without us knowing? Where did they get the technology to create stealth systems more advanced than ours? How long have they been planning this?" Trap, his communication officer, was frantically trying to contact Imperial Command, but all signals were being jammed by human technology that was somehow more sophisticated than the systems the Empire had developed over thousands of years. The humans had not just matched Imperial capabilities, they had surpassed them. Captain Bach opened a communication channel to the Imperial flagship. "Admiral Thek," she said in a voice that was calm and professional. "I am Captain Bach of the Earth Defense Force. You are completely surrounded by superior firepower and have no possibility of escape or victory. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to galactic war conventions." Thek stared at the human captain on his screen, unable to believe that a member of a primitive species was offering him terms of surrender. The woman looked completely confident, as if she had expected this outcome all along. Her bridge crew was working with the efficiency of veterans who had trained for this moment for years. "Impossible," Thek shouted into his communicator. "Humans are primitives. You barely learned to travel between stars. How can you possibly have built a fleet this advanced? Where did you get the resources, the technology, the knowledge, to create ships like these?" Captain Bach smiled coldly. "We have been preparing for this war far longer than you realize, Admiral. Every piece of technology you thought was beyond our understanding, we studied and improved. We used your own arrogance as a weapon against you by letting you underestimate our true capabilities. The human ships were arranged in a formation that demonstrated perfect tactical understanding of three-dimensional space combat. Unlike the Imperial fleet, which was designed to intimidate planetary targets, the human formation was optimized for maximum firepower from multiple angles simultaneously. Thek's tactical officer reported that every Imperial ship was targeted by multiple human vessels. Their weapons were locked, on and ready to fire. The humans had achieved complete tactical superiority in a matter of seconds, turning what should have been an easy conquest into a hopeless trap. "You have 1 minute to surrender, Admiral Thek," Captain Bach announced, "or we will demonstrate why the Empire was wrong to dismiss humanity as a primitive species. Your choice is simple. Surrender and live, or resist and watch your fleet be destroyed around you." The Imperial Admiral looked around his bridge at officers who were staring in shock at displays showing the impossible situation they faced. 200 of the Empire's finest warships surrounded by an enemy they had thought incapable of building even one advanced vessel. "How many ships do you have?" Thek asked desperately, hoping the answer would give him some chance of victory or escape. Surely the humans could not have built enough vessels to match the full strength of an Imperial conquest. Fleet Captain. Bach checked a display on her command chair. We have exactly 437 ships in this system. Admiral, all of them are more advanced than your best vessels, and all of them have been specifically designed to defeat Imperial technology. We studied your weaknesses for decades. The number hit, thick like a physical blow. The humans had more than twice as many ships as his fleet, and everyone was technologically superior. How was this possible for a species the Empire had classified as barely capable of interplanetary travel just years? Ago Minister Yoon watched from his command bunker as displays showed the perfect encirclement of the Imperial fleet. Every human ship was in position, every weapon was ready, and every tactical advantage was on their side. The plan that had taken decades to develop was working flawlessly. The Imperial fleet tried to move into defensive formations but found their ships surrounded so completely that any movement would expose them to devastating crossfire. Human tactical planning had anticipated every possible response and positioned their forces to counter any strategy the Empire might attempt. 30 seconds, Admiral Thek, Captain Bach announced. Your time is running out. The Empire sent you here to conquer a primitive world, but instead you found the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Make your choice before we make it for you. Thek realized that his entire career, his reputation, and the lives of his crew depended on a decision he had never imagined having to make. How could he surrender to a species the Empire had dismissed as animals? How could he fight against overwhelming odds that would result in the destruction of his entire fleet? The countdown reached 0, and Captain Bach waited for the Imperial response. Her finger hovered over the weapons control, knowing that the next few seconds would determine the fate of both species and possibly change the balance of power in the entire galaxy forever. The human fleet hung in space like a metal constellation surrounding their enemies with the patient efficiency of predators who had finally cornered their prey. After decades of careful planning and preparation, the moment of truth had arrived, and humanity was ready to announce its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Thek faced the most important decision of his life, knowing that whatever happened next would be remembered throughout the Empire as either the greatest military disaster in galactic history or the most impossible victory against overwhelming odds. The age of easy Imperial conquest was about to end forever. 6 months after the humiliating council meeting, the Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, exactly as predicted. The sight was both magnificent and terrifying, as over 200 massive warships materialized, in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant sun. Each ship was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could turn planets into dust. Admiral Thek stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the small blue planet through the main view screen. He was a veteran commander who had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire, and Earth would be his 48th victory. The primitive humans had no idea what was coming for them, and Thek intended to make their defeat as quick and painful as possible. The Imperial fleet arranged itself in the standard conquest formation, with heavy battleships in the center, fast attack cruisers on the flanks, and support vessels spread throughout the formation. It was a formation designed to inspire terror in primitive species, and it had never failed to achieve complete victory within hours of arrival on Earth. President Kang received reports of the fleet's arrival from hidden observation posts throughout the solar system. The Imperial ships were positioned exactly where human strategists had predicted, following tactical doctrines that Earth military officers had studied for years. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Thek opened a communication channel to broadcast his demands to the entire planet. Humans of Earth, he announced in a voice full of authority and contempt. I am Admiral Thek of the Galactic Empire. You have been designated as a tributary species and will surrender immediately. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. The response came faster than Thek had expected. President Kang appeared on screen, wearing a simple suit and standing in what looked like an ordinary office building behind him. Through the windows, Thek could see a city that looked peaceful and undefended. The human leader looked calm despite facing the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Admiral Thek, President Kang said in a steady voice, humanity rejects your demands, "We will not become slaves to your empire. We will fight for our freedom no matter what the cost. Your threats do not frighten us because we believe in the right of all species to determine their own destiny." Thek laughed at the foolish bravery of this primitive leader. "You have no ships that can challenge us, no weapons that can harm us, and no allies who will help you. Your resistance will last exactly as long as it takes us to destroy your major cities from orbit. Then you will beg for the mercy you should have accepted now." The admiral gestured to his weapons officer, and the first bombardment began. Massive energy beams lanced down from the Imperial ships, striking military bases around the planet. Explosions lit up the night sky. As installations were reduced to smoking craters, the demonstration was designed to show humans how hopeless their situation was. But Minister Yoon, watching from his hidden command bunker deep underground, noticed something very interesting about the Imperial attack patterns. The aliens were targeting exactly the installations that human intelligence had identified as likely priority targets. They were following their standard conquest procedures like a textbook example. More importantly, all the bases being destroyed had been evacuated weeks ago. The explosions looked spectacular, but they were only destroying empty buildings and obsolete equipment. The real human military assets were hidden in places the Empire could never imagine, and protected by technology the aliens had never encountered. The Imperial bombardment continued for hours, reducing visible military targets to rubble, while Thek watched with satisfaction. This was always his favorite part of a conquest: watching primitive defenses crumble under the overwhelming power of Imperial technology. Soon the humans would realize how helpless they were. Fighter squadrons launched from the Imperial carriers to begin systematic destruction of human cities. The alien pilots were experienced veterans who had burned countless worlds for the Empire. They expected no resistance from a species that had just learned to travel between stars. Their overconfidence would be their downfall. Colonel Tay monitored the Imperial attack patterns from her hidden command post. The alien fighters were flying in standard formations, using predictable tactics against targets that human strategists had specifically chosen to be destroyed. The Empire was following their conquest, manual exactly as expected. Hidden sensors throughout the solar system tracked every Imperial ship, cataloging their positions, recording their communications, and analyzing their defensive systems. The aliens thought they were fighting helpless primitives, but they were actually being studied by an intelligence network that had been preparing for this moment for decades. President Kang broadcast another message to the Imperial fleet as explosions continued to light up the sky behind him. "You have destroyed empty buildings and obsolete equipment, Admiral Thek, but you have not harmed a single human being. Our people are safe, and our real defenses have not yet been revealed." Thek felt a moment of confusion as he listened to the human leaders' words. The resistance should have collapsed by now. Most primitive species surrendered after the first demonstration of Imperial firepower. Why were these humans still defying him when their cities were burning? The truth was that the burning cities were mostly empty shells, evacuated populations hidden in underground shelters that the Empire could not detect from orbit. The real human civilization was underground in space stations and on hidden bases throughout the solar system, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. Thek's communication officer reported strange readings from their sensors. "Sir, the humans appear to have some kind of stealth technology. We are detecting energy signatures that do not match any known primitive technology. There may be more human assets in this system than we initially believed." "Impossible," Thek replied dismissively. "These humans barely know how to build working starships. They cannot possibly have developed stealth systems more advanced than ours." Continue the bombardment and prepare for planetary invasion. Their resistance will crumble when they see our ground forces, but deep in space, things were happening that the Imperial fleet could not detect. Space itself seemed to shimmer and bend in ways that should have been impossible according to known physics. The humans had not just learned from alien technology, they had improved it beyond what any species in the galaxy thought possible. Minister Yoon smiled grimly as he watched displays showing the Imperial fleet position. The aliens had arranged themselves exactly as predicted in a formation that would allow maximum firepower against planetary targets. but left them vulnerable to attack from unexpected directions. Their tactical manuals had become their weakness. The moment had almost arrived when humanity would reveal its true nature to a galaxy that had dismissed them as primitive animals. The Empire was about to learn that underestimating an enemy was the most dangerous mistake. A military commander could make Admiral Thek prepared to send his final ultimatum to the human government, confident that no primitive species could resist the might of the Imperial fleet for long. He had no idea that he was about to witness the most shocking military reversal in galactic history, or that his name would become a cautionary tale told throughout the Empire for generations. The trap was set. The prey had taken the bait, and now it was time for the hunters to discover that they had become the hunted. In minutes, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift forever, and the age of human dominance would begin with a revelation that would shake the stars themselves. 3 months had passed since the terrible meeting with the Galactic Council, and now Juan found himself floating in an old abandoned space station far from any populated system. The station looked broken and empty from the outside, but inside it was full of advanced human technology that should not have existed. Admiral Sung waited for him in the main conference room, and Juan was shocked by how different she looked from the last time he had seen her. Before, she had been a quiet, diplomatic assistant who rarely spoke and always seemed nervous. Now she stood tall and confident, wearing a military uniform, covered with medals and rank insignia that Juan had never seen before. "Welcome to the Real Earth Defense Headquarters," Admiral Sung said with a smile that was both warm and dangerous. "Everything you thought you knew about humanity's capabilities is wrong. We have been playing a very long game, and the Empire just walked into our trap exactly as we planned." Juan stared at her in confusion. "What are you talking about?" "Sung, we barely have a dozen ships that can travel between stars. How can we possibly fight the Empire when they have thousands of warships and weapons that can destroy entire planets?" Sung activated a holographic display that filled the room with images of massive construction facilities hidden inside asteroids and on the dark sides of moons. Hundreds of huge ships were being built in secret shipyards that were invisible to alien sensors. The ships looked nothing like the primitive vessels the Empire had laughed at. "We have been preparing for this war for over 50 years, she explained. "Long before we made contact with the Empire, we found crashed alien ships on Earth and other planets in our system. Our scientists studied their technology and learned how to build better versions. We let the Empire think we were primitive, while we built the most advanced fleet in the galaxy." The hologram showed detailed plans of human warships that were twice the size of Imperial vessels and covered with weapons that looked far more advanced than anything Juan had seen in the council chambers. These ships had shields that could bend space itself, and weapons that could destroy targets from impossible distances. Commander June entered the room, and Juan was surprised to see him wearing a different uniform. With intelligence officer markings, June had not been assigned to protect Juan during the diplomatic mission. He had been sent to spy on the Empire and learn everything about their military capabilities. "I spent 2 years undercover in the Imperial military," June explained. "I served on their ships, learned their tactics, studied their weapons, and found weaknesses in all their defensive systems. The Empire is powerful, but they have not fought a real war in centuries. They have become lazy and overconfident." Nari appeared on another holographic screen, speaking from what looked like a high-tech intelligence center. She was surrounded by computers and communication equipment that was far more advanced than anything Juan had seen on Earth. "We have been intercepting Imperial communications for decades," she reported. "Every military plan, every troop movement, every secret weapon project. We know about all of it." Sung walked over to a large tactical display that showed the entire galaxy with colored markers, indicating Imperial territories, rebel worlds, and areas under human influence. "While you were negotiating with the Council, we were making secret alliances with species that hate the Empire. Many of them have been providing us with intelligence and resources in exchange for our protection." The display zoomed in to show Earth surrounded by what looked like empty space, but Sung pointed to hidden markers that indicated cloaked space stations, weapons platforms, and entire fleets of warships. "We have turned our entire star system into the most heavily defended fortress in the galaxy. The Empire thinks they will be attacking a helpless world, but they will be walking into a death trap. Juan could not believe what he was seeing. How is this possible? Where did we get the resources to build all of this? How did we keep it secret from Imperial spies and observation posts? Sung smiled again, and the hologram changed to show mining operations in distant star systems and secret bases hidden throughout human-controlled space. We have been exploring and colonizing systems that the Empire thinks are empty or worthless. We found rich sources of rare metals and energy that allowed us to build our fleet in secret. The technology came from careful study of crashed ships, abandoned bases, and equipment that the Empire left behind when they conquered other species. June added, human scientists and engineers are very good at learning from other people's mistakes and making improvements. We took alien technology and made it better. Nari's voice came from the speakers around the room. The primitive ships the Empire saw were deliberate deceptions designed to make them underestimate our real capabilities. Every piece of technology we showed them was at least 50 years out of date. Our real ships use stealth systems that make them completely invisible to Imperial sensors. The hologram showed a timeline of human development that revealed decades of careful planning and preparation. Every diplomatic contact with alien species had been designed to gather intelligence. Every trade agreement had included secret clauses that provided access to advanced materials. Every cultural exchange had been an opportunity to learn about Imperial weaknesses. Admiral Sung moved to another display that showed detailed battle plans. The Empire will arrive exactly where we want them to arrive. They will position their ships in formations that we have studied and learned to defeat. They will use tactics that we have practiced fighting against for years. Their confidence will become their greatest weakness. The plan was elegant and terrifying in its complexity. Let the Empire come to Earth expecting an easy victory. Allow them to position their entire fleet in what they think is an overwhelming attack formation. Then reveal the true power of humanity when they are most vulnerable and cannot retreat or call for reinforcements. June activated another hologram that showed Imperial fleet movements. We know exactly when they will arrive, exactly how many ships they will bring, and exactly what weapons they will use. We have been tracking their preparation for months, and every detail matches our predictions perfectly. The Empire thinks this will be a simple conquest operation, Sung explained. They are bringing enough firepower to destroy a primitive civilization, but not enough to fight against a technologically advanced military force. They will realize their mistake too late to do anything about it. Juan looked around the room at all the evidence of humanity's secret preparations and felt a mixture of pride and terror. If this plan worked, humanity would become one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. If it failed, Earth would be destroyed, and every human would be killed or enslaved. What happens after we defeat their fleet? He asked. The Empire has thousands of other ships stationed throughout the galaxy. They will send reinforcements, and we cannot fight the entire Imperial military by ourselves. That is where our allies come in, Nari said from her screen. When the Empire suffers a major defeat at Earth, dozens of rebel species will begin attacking Imperial territories throughout the galaxy. The Empire will be fighting on hundreds of fronts simultaneously and will not be able to concentrate their forces against us. Sung nodded, and the display showed potential battle zones throughout Imperial space. This victory will be the signal for a galaxy-wide rebellion that has been planned for decades. Oppressed species everywhere will see that the Empire can be defeated and will rise up to reclaim their freedom. The room fell silent as Juan absorbed the enormous scope of what humanity had been planning. The Empire had dismissed humans as primitive animals, but they had actually been preparing the most sophisticated military campaign. In galactic history, they had turned their apparent weakness into a weapon that would destroy their enemies. 3 more months until the Empire arrives at Earth, Admiral Sung said. The final preparations are almost complete. Our ships are moving into position, our allies are ready to act, and our enemies are walking blindly toward their doom. The age of Imperial dominance is about to end forever. The huge metal doors of the Galactic Dominion Council opened with a loud sound that echoed through the massive chamber. Ambassador Juan walked slowly into the room, feeling very small compared to the giant alien beings sitting on their tall chairs. Around him, the ceiling was so high he could barely see it, and the walls were covered with strange symbols that glowed with blue light. Juan wore his best diplomatic uniform, but it looked plain and simple next to the fancy clothes and armor of the
alien representatives. The reptilian chancellor sat in the biggest chair at the front of the room. His green, scaly skin looked wet under the bright lights, and his yellow eyes stared down at Juan like he was looking at a bug. The chancellor started
laughing, and the sound was cold and mean. Soon all the other aliens joined in. The laughter bounced off the walls and made Juan feel even smaller than before. Behind the chancellor, a huge screen appeared, showing pictures of Earth and the small spaceships that humans had built. The aliens pointed at the ships and laughed even harder. "Look at these pathetic vessels," the chancellor said in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. "They call this space travel. We had better ships 10,000 years ago when we were still learning to walk." The other council members nodded and made agreeing sounds. Some of them were making jokes in their own languages that Juan could not understand, but he knew they were making fun of humans. A tall, thin alien with 4 arms stood up and spoke. "These humans have only just learned to travel between stars. Most of our children build better toys in their playrooms. Why should we waste time talking to such primitive creatures?" The alien sat back down and crossed all 4 arms, looking very proud of what he had said. Juan took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. He had practiced this speech many times on the long journey to the council station. "Your Excellencies," he began, "humans may be new to space travel, but we are a peaceful species. We only want to join the galactic community and learn from your great wisdom. We ask for protection under the Galactic Accords for developing civilizations." The chancellor made a sound that might have been laughter but sounded more like a snake hissing. "Protection," he repeated. "The only protection you need, little human, is protection from us." He pressed something on his chair, and the screen changed to show a map of human space with red lines drawn through. "We have decided that humans will become a tributary species," the chancellor announced. "This means you will work for us. You will mine metals on your planets. You will grow food for our armies. You will build ships and weapons that we will use to conquer other weak races like yours. The decision has been made and there will be no discussion." Juan felt his heart sink, but he kept his face calm. "Excellency, surely we can negotiate some kind of agreement that benefits both our peoples. We have much to offer in terms of culture and knowledge, and perhaps we can find ways to work together as equals, rather than as masters and servants." The aliens burst into even louder laughter than before. A huge bear-like creature with 6 legs slammed, his massive paw on his chair making a sound like thunder. "Equal," he roared. "You are not equal to the dirt under our feet. You are animals that learn to talk. We will use you like we use all the other slave races." Behind Juan, his aide, Nari, stood very still, but her eyes were moving constantly. She was watching everything and everyone in the room. Her small device was recording all the conversations and taking pictures of the alien technology and weapons. The aliens did not notice her because they thought humans were too stupid to be dangerous. Commander Jun stood near the door wearing a simple security uniform, but his eyes were sharp and alert. He was not really there to protect Juan. He was there to learn about alien military tactics and to see how their weapons worked. Every alien soldier in the room was being studied and catalogued for future reference, but none of them knew it. The chancellor continued speaking, while the screen showed pictures of human cities. "The compliance. Ships will arrive at your world in 6 months," he said. "They will carry our overseers who will organize your people into work groups. Those who resist will be killed as examples to the others. Your leaders will be replaced with aliens who understand how to manage primitive species properly. We will take your strongest people to work in our mines on dangerous planets." The thin, 4-armed alien added, "Your smartest people will be sent to our research facilities to help build better weapons for our armies. Your most beautiful people will be kept as servants and entertainment for our nobles." Juan wanted to protest, but he knew it would do no good. The decision was already made, and nothing he said would change their minds. Instead, he listened carefully to every word they said and memorized every detail about their plans. Nari was doing the same thing while pretending to be scared and helpless. The bear-like alien stood up again and walked closer to Juan. His breath smelled like rotting Meat and his claws were as long as Juan fingers. Some of our generals wanted to just destroy your planet and take what we needed from the ruins, he growled. But the Chancellor is merciful. He will let most of you live if you obey without question. Months, the Chancellor repeated. That gives you time to prepare your people for their new lives as our property. Use this time wisely. Teach them to obey without question. Any planet that resists will be bombed from space until nothing lives there. We have done this to hundreds of worlds, and we will do it to yours if necessary. The huge screen changed again to show videos of planets that had been destroyed from space cities, turned to glass deserts, where forests used to grow. Oceans boiled, away leaving empty craters. The message was clear: obey or die. There would be no third choice for humanity. As the council session ended, the aliens talked among themselves about how to divide up the human territories. They discussed which species would make the best overseers for human slaves. Some wanted to use humans in gladiator fights for entertainment. Others wanted to use them for dangerous experiments that might kill them. Juan, Nari, and June were escorted out of the chamber by alien guards who pushed them roughly and made threatening sounds. The guards thought this was funny because humans looked so weak and helpless. None of them noticed that June was counting their weapons and memorizing their patrol routes, or that Nari was recording everything with hidden devices as they walked through the station corridors back to their small ship. Juan noticed that June looked angry. His jaw was tight and his hands were clenched into fists. Nari was whispering into a communication device using codes that sounded more complex than normal diplomatic language. Something was happening that the aliens did not know about. The three humans boarded their simple-looking ship and prepared to return to Earth with news of their total failure. The aliens watched them go and laughed about how pathetic humans were. None of them suspected that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history by underestimating an enemy that was far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. Admiral Thek made his choice in the worst possible way, by ordering his fleet to attack instead of surrender. The Imperial ships opened fire with all weapons, believing that superior numbers and firepower would somehow overcome their desperate tactical situation. The first exchange of weapons fire lasted exactly 4 minutes and completely changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Human shields absorbed the Imperial attack with ease, while return fire from the Earth Defense Force cut through enemy defenses like plasma beams through paper. The advanced targeting systems that Captain Bach had mentioned were not empty boasts. They identified structural weaknesses in Imperial ship designs that alien engineers thought were impossible to detect from external scans. Captain Bach watched calmly as her weapons officers destroyed 3 Imperial cruisers with surgical precision. Each shot was placed exactly where it would cause maximum damage to critical systems, while avoiding areas that might harm the crew quarters. The humans were fighting to win, not to commit genocide. The Imperial fleet discovered that their standardized ship designs, which had been efficient for mass production, were actually a critical weakness when fighting against an enemy that had studied those designs for decades. Every Imperial vessel had the same vulnerabilities in the same locations, making them easy targets for human gunners. Colonel Tay launched her fighter squadrons with perfect timing as the Imperial formation began to break apart under human fire. The small, fast human fighters were completely different from anything the Empire had encountered before. They moved like living things, dodging between massive ships and striking at weapon systems with incredible accuracy. The Imperial pilots tried to engage the human fighters but found themselves outmatched in every way. Human pilots had trained in simulators that perfectly replicated Imperial fighter tactics, while the Empire had never encountered anything like human combat doctrine. The aliens were fighting blind against enemies who knew their every move. Thek's flagship shuddered as human weapons found gaps in his shields that should not have existed. His chief engineer reported that the enemy somehow knew exactly where their defensive systems were weakest and were targeting those specific points with weapons designed to exploit those particular vulnerabilities. "This is impossible," the admiral shouted as another section of his ship exploded. "How do they know our ship design so well? How do they have weapons specifically designed to penetrate our defenses? What kind of intelligence operation have they been running?" Captain Bach answered him over the communication channel. "We have been studying crashed Imperial ships for over 50 years, Admiral." Every weakness in your technology has been cataloged and analyzed. We know your ships better than your own engineers do, because we have been preparing for this battle since before you were born. The human dreadnought engaged Thek's flagship in direct combat, and the Imperial Admiral quickly realized that he was facing a vessel that was superior in every possible way. The human ship was faster, despite being larger, more maneuverable despite its massive size, and armed with weapons that adapted their firing patterns in real time to overcome any defensive countermeasures. Minister Yoon coordinated the overall battle from his command center, watching as human. Tactical doctrine proved superior to Imperial strategy at every level. The aliens had relied on overwhelming firepower and rigid formations, while humans used flexibility, adaptation, and superior intelligence to turn enemy strengths into weaknesses. Battle became a demonstration of what happened when careful preparation met overconfidence. Human commanders had spent years studying Imperial tactics and developing specific counters for every strategy the Empire might use. What should have been an easy Imperial victory became a systematic destruction of their finest fleet. Thek's communication officer reported that they were receiving surrender broadcasts from Imperial ships throughout the fleet. Many commanders had realized that continued resistance was hopeless and were trying to save their crews from pointless destruction. The disciplined Imperial formation was collapsing into chaos and desperation. Captain Bach proved that human military doctrine was not just about superior technology, but also superior tactics. Her ship danced around the massive Imperial flagship like a fighter plane attacking a floating fortress. Every human weapon hit critical systems, while Imperial return fire was absorbed by shields or deflected by armor. That seemed to anticipate every attack. The Imperial tactical officer reported that their weapons were having no effect on human defenses. Sir, our plasma cannons are not penetrating their shields. Our missiles are being intercepted by point defense systems we have never seen before, and their armor appears to be made from materials that we do not recognize. How is this possible? Thek demanded. These humans were supposed to be primitives, barely capable of building working starships. How do they have defensive technology more advanced than anything in the Imperial arsenal? Where did they get the knowledge to build armor that can resist our most powerful weapons? Colonel Tai's fighters swarmed through the Imperial formation like angry insects, targeting shield generators, weapon systems, and engine components with devastating effectiveness. The Imperial pilots found themselves fighting against enemies who seemed to know their ships better than they did, hitting weak points that were supposed to be classified secrets. The human fighters used tactics that the Empire had never encountered before. Instead of engaging in traditional dogfights, they worked together in coordinated teams that overwhelmed individual Imperial pilots through superior numbers and positioning. Every human pilot seemed to know exactly what their wingmates were doing without any visible communication. Admiral Thek realized that his fleet was being systematically dismantled by enemies who had planned this battle, down to the smallest detail. Every Imperial strength had been anticipated and countered, every weakness had been identified and exploited. The humans had turned warfare into a science while the Empire had relied on brute force. Captain Bach opened another communication channel. Admiral Thek, your fleet is defeated. Your ships are being destroyed and your crews are dying for no reason. Surrender now, and we will provide medical assistance to your wounded and safe passage home for your survivors. Continue fighting and we will be forced to destroy every ship in your fleet. The Imperial Admiral looked around his bridge at officers who were staring in horror at displays showing the destruction of their comrades. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being reduced to burning wreckage by weapons they could not understand, used by tactics they could not counter. We surrender, Thek said quietly into his communicator, knowing that those two words would end his career, and probably his life when he returned to Imperial space. The Galactic Empire does not negotiate with primitive species, but we surrender to the superior force that has defeated us today. Captain Bach nodded professionally. Your surrender is accepted. Admiral, please order all Imperial ships to cease fire and prepare to be boarded by prize crews. We will provide medical assistance and basic supplies while we determine the fate of your fleet and personnel. As the guns fell silent throughout the solar system, Minister Yoon allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The plan that had seemed impossible when they started had worked perfectly. The Empire had underestimated humanity for the last time. and the galaxy would never be the same. The wreckage of the Imperial fleet drifted in space, surrounded by undamaged human ships that had achieved complete victory against supposedly superior odds. The age of Imperial dominance was ending, and the age of human influence in galactic affairs was about to begin with, a demonstration that would be remembered throughout the galaxy forever. News of the battle would spread to every corner of Imperial space within days, carrying the message that the supposedly primitive humans had defeated one of the Empire's most powerful fleet species throughout the galaxy, would learn that resistance to Imperial rule was not only possible, but could be victorious when properly planned and executed. Within 6 hours of Admiral Thek's surrender, the news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy, faster than anyone thought possible. Species that had suffered under Imperial rule for centuries suddenly heard that the supposedly primitive humans had defeated an entire Imperial fleet using superior technology and tactics. The impossible had become reality. President Kang stood before representatives of dozens of galactic species in the same chamber, where Ambassador Huan had been humiliated months earlier. But now the roles were completely reversed. The aliens who had laughed at humanity were sitting quietly, while human negotiators dictated the terms of